So headlines were made the other day as former great Chicago Bears kick and punt returner Devin Hester officially announced his retirement from the National Football League. Now, you'll have to pardon me for being kind of surprised that he made the announcement, not because it wasn't time, but simply because of the fact I thought he already had officially retired. It was just one of those things I had kind of taken for granted. I thought he was done. I thought the little bit that we saw of him last season was going to be his last hurrah in the National Football League. Man, time really goes by quickly. I realize now that Devin Hester will not play anymore in the National Football League, and it's just striking to me that he stuck around in the league for 11 seasons, going back to his rookie year in 2006. You just don't realize how quickly time can fly by. But as the announcement made waves on social media, you inevitably got the big discussion about Devin Hester, his career, his legacy, the presumptive greatest return specialist in NFL history, and a debate about whether or not Devin Hester will someday end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's going to be a big debate over the years, and I think it's going to be a significant debate over the years, and it's going to be a very interesting debate to see how it plays out. Now, I'm going to kind of throw my hat in the ring here and give you my thoughts about Devin Hester and whether or not I really feel like he's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. But before I do that, when Devin Hester was drafted in the second round out of Miami, in 2006, you didn't really know what Jerry Angelo was looking for out of him, where they were going to play him, whether he was going to be a corner, whether he was going to be a wide receiver. Obviously, he thought he was going to have some type of impact on the return game. But when I tell you, when he came into the league in 2006 as a rookie, he was a force just solely as a return specialist. I mean, he was a force, and in terms of rookies generating pure buzz in the National Football League, he generated the most buzz as a rookie with his play on the field and his performance and his production since Randy Moss in '98, and that is a fact, Jack. I don't care what the hell anybody says. And this guy was a return man, so he only touched the ball a few times a game. But for those Bears teams, Devin Hester was a piece that put them over the top. Devin Hester was a piece that took them to that next level. It's no coincidence that in his rookie season, with his 6 regular season return TDs, that he helped lead the Bears to the Super Bowl. And I always felt this. When it came to the MVP race in 2006, I always thought Devin Hester got hosed. I thought he got screwed. Yeah, Peyton Manning, great year, blah, 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 and all this other crap. But to me, nobody was more valuable to his team, more significant to his team, all the while having to deal with the Rex Grossman handicap at the quarterback position, than Devin Hester. He changed games. He changed everything about the Chicago Bears that season. I mean, you think about Devin Hester's impact in that season. I think about in the Monday night game against St. Louis, the Rams at the time, when he had 2 return touchdowns. Just incredible to see. You can go to the opening game, the punt return against Green Bay. Late in the game, he made it 26-0. You're like, ooh, the Bears might have something here. But you think about also the Arizona game. Everybody knows it for Denny Green's post-game rant. The Bears are who they thought we were. And we let them off the hook. And if you want to crown them, then crown their asses. But what we remember is it was Devin Hester that had the game-winning return touchdown. So not only would he make big plays happen, not only could he score, but oftentimes he scored in big key moments and situations and put the dagger into the backs of teams. He was the ultimate difference maker. You think about that Sunday night game against the Giants his rookie year. What was it, that 108-yard field goal return? I mean, it was just crazy. And then when you get to the Super Bowl, like Ted Ginn had done a few weeks before for Ohio State, when you sit there and he takes the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, you're thinking, oh my God, the Bears are going to roll. Oh my God, maybe they'll be different. Like again, unlike Ohio State against Florida, where it was the opening kickoff return, take it back by 10, getting pretty much nothing else the rest of the game for the team. You're like, Devin Hester just broke the will of the Indianapolis Colts on the very first play of the game. And to give you an idea of just how significant Devin Hester was as a presence, a force, as a returner, Tony Dungy and the coaching staff of the Colts were bound and determined to say, we are so afraid of Devin Hester. We made one mistake in this game. We kicked it to him one time, and he took it all the way for 7 points. We will concede the 40-yard line to the Bears. We will hit squib kicks. We will intentionally kick the ball out of bounds. They were so terrified and so petrified of Devin Hester and what he could do in the return game. It totally tore the Indianapolis Colts' special teams to shreds in that game, if you remember. Just absolute shreds. And as crazy as this 2006 was, you could argue 2007 was every bit as good, to the point where teams just absolutely refused to kick to him for a couple of years, and his numbers kind of dipped, but still impacting the game, even if he didn't get the ball a ton, even if he was kept out of the end zone for a couple of years, because teams were so afraid to kick to him that they would give up all types of field position, just for the threat, the fear of what Devin Hester could do. And you think about great sports nicknames, and we don't get a lot of them nowadays, but when Jeff Joniak started calling him on WBBM 780 in Chicago, the radio call for the games, he started calling him the Windy City Flyer. I mean, even the nickname is great. That nickname is Hall of Fame worthy. The Windy City Flyer, Devin Hester. But man, as a Bears fan, the level of excitement that Devin Hester brought to the game, the level of impact that Devin Hester brought to that team can simply not be understated. There's a reason during that time frame for Lovie Smith that two of their best seasons, 2006 and 2010, happened to have seasons where Devin Hester made a big impact because he truly was a difference maker. But the challenge is that the Bears kind of screwed the pooch on him a little bit by being so bound and determined to make him a wide receiver that it took away from his return game for a couple of years, and frankly, I think always negatively impacted just how much impact he could have as a returner, along with some rules changes, along with teams just being outright afraid to kick to him because they lack so much confidence in their own special teams units that it really kind of held back Devin Hester in terms of the type of numbers that he could actually put up as a return man. Now, he still holds the NFL record for most return touchdowns with 20. I mean, he's the guy. And everybody knows, as terms of a football fan, who Devin Hester was and the type of impact that he had. But you don't have any primary kick returners in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. No Mel Grays, no Brian Mitchells, nobody like that. So to say that a Devin Hester was, when really, honestly, you're basing it off of 3 seasons of massive production, could seem like a massive reach, especially because, yeah, he played receiver, but he wasn't particularly good at it. He didn't really do a whole lot else other than be a return guy. And while you say, well, special teams, they've got some guys in the Hall of Fame. You've got, 2 kickers and a punter? You've got Jan Stenerud, Morton Anderson, and Ray Guy. And look at how long it took for Ray Guy to get in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, surely you'll have Adam Vinatieri get in, probably first ballot whenever he decides to hang it up. But you just don't have a lot of special teams guys in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I understand it to a degree because you don't think of them as important as quarterbacks or wide receivers or any other positional guys in the offensive or defensive side of the ball. But when you hear so many coaches talk about how special teams is the third aspect of the game, it is a third of the game, it's as important as anything else, there is something to be said about that. And when you look at the Bears and some of the success they had in the previous decade, it came because of the success they had on special teams, especially behind special teams coordinator Dave Taub, who's the best in the business and arguably maybe the best special teams coordinator in NFL history. The guy knows what the hell he's doing. And when you pair him with the greatest return man in NFL history, magic can happen. And you say, okay, well, he only had a couple of years of production. And yeah, honestly, he kind of did. I mean, that's the real truth. But was he so good and so dominant and so great and so impactful in that period of time where he still deserves his moment? I look at the Hall of Fames for different sports and look at it in a couple of different ways. Guys should be in there because they are truly the greatest of greats of what they did all time in the NFL. And you also feel like as a byproduct that you cannot effectively tell the story of the league without those individuals. And to me, Devin Hester ultimately passes both of those tests. He's the best of all time at what he did. It's kind of like in baseball. I would hope someday that if you got a middle reliever that was consistently dominant at what he did for 15 or 20 years, yeah, maybe he was never a closer or a top flight starter, but he was so good, so consistently at his role that you would reward that someday by making him a pro baseball Hall of Famer. You would induct him into Cooperstown. You would say, hey, this guy is one of the best of all time. Now, you could sit there and get into the argument of, well, what about a Robert Horry in basketball? And I feel like it's kind of a different environment, a different type of thing, because it's a little bit easier to measure stats and production there. And in that case, putting somebody in like a Robert Horry, who's one of the great role players in NBA history, based off of his ring, says that you should put other guys in there solely because they happen to be on teams that won rings, is a little bit of a different thing. But I can look at Devin Hester and I can make the argument that he was the best of all time at what he did. Now, I don't think he'll get in immediately. I'm not guaranteeing that he'll get in at all. I just look at it and I say, the return game is important. Special teams are incredibly important. Teams win or lose games solely based off of special teams play at the high school, college, and NFL level every week, every season. No question. So why shouldn't some of those guys that were the true creme de la creme, the true best of the best, not be rewarded with a spot at Canton in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Now, me personally, I would look to enshrine somebody like Steve Tasker first, especially because he's waited years and years and he's pretty much unanimously thought of as the greatest special teams player of all time. I'm okay with a Steve Tasker going in first, and in fact, I feel like it would only be right. It's tough, though, when you've got all these other names and all these other great players on the ballots. Who do you put off there to put in somebody that only played a limited role a specific amount of the time? And how do you really quantify or make tangible the impact that they had? But I feel like it's also a motivator for years to come for people to play special teams, to sit there and say, hey, if I make a lot of Pro Bowls as a special teamer someday, even though I wasn't good enough for the offensive or defensive side of the ball, I could be recognized for my achievements, my accomplishments, my skills, for what I did with a bust in Canton. Like, nobody denies that Devin Hester is probably the best return man of all time. And I don't think anybody would deny that it's almost impossible to tell the story of the league without mentioning Devin Hester at some point in time, because of rules changes, because of the way he impacted the game, the way other teams in the mid-2000s tried to go find their own Devin Hester, understanding the value of the return game and having an explosive, dynamic kick and punt returner. And really, frankly, I feel like the only thing that held Devin Hester back from having 30 or 35 career return touchdowns was Lovie Smith and the Chicago Bears coaching staff trying to make him a wide receiver. That's it. It's the only thing to me that really held him back. I will always remember Devin Hester as one of the most exciting, dynamic players that I have ever seen, regardless of sport. He was electric. He was pure excitement. He was so many things. To me, he was not only the Bears MVP in that 2006 NFC Championship season, to me, he was the MVP of the National Football League. And yes, there is a real argument to be made there. That's how much he meant. That's how impactful he was. So should Devin Hester, the Windy City Flyer, go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday? My answer is absolutely yes. And maybe it opens a little bit of a Pandora's box, but it seems like it's fundamentally, inherently wrong to have somebody who's the best of all time at what he did, with the impact that he had on the game of football, and not have him enshrined in basically your Hall of Heroes in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It doesn't need to happen right away, and it might be years and years before it does. It may be Veterans Committee type of stuff. But someday he needs to be in there because, frankly, he earned it.